Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. The forest canopy loomed overhead, casting dappled shadows across the rugged trail. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating a mesmerizing dance of light and shadow on the forest floor. The air hung thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, a heady mixture that filled the lungs with each breath. Twigs snapped underfoot as a lone figure made his way along the winding path. The hiker moved with a determined stride, his backpack bouncing slightly with each step. Despite his confident gait, there was a hint of tension in his shoulders, a tightness around his eyes that betrayed an underlying unease. The man paused, reaching for his water bottle. As he tilted his head back to take a long drink, his gaze swept over the towering trees surrounding him. A frown creased his brow, accentuating the worry lines etched into his face. Damn, why'd I have to pick this trail? He muttered, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Should have stuck to the beginner's loop. He squared his shoulders and pressed on, determined to prove to himself that he could handle the challenge. The path grew steeper, winding its way up the hillside. Loose rocks skittered beneath his feet, and he found himself reaching out to grab nearby branches for balance. "Come on, Stan," he panted, pushing himself forward. "You've got this. Don't let a little hill get the best of you." But as he rounded a sharp bend, his foot caught on an exposed root. Time seemed to slow as he felt his balance shift, his body tilting backward. For a heart-stopping moment, he teetered on the edge of the path, arms windmilling frantically. Then gravity took hold. The world spun in a dizzying blur of green and brown as Stan tumbled down the steep incline. Branches whipped at his face and arms, rocks dug into his back, and pain exploded through his body with each impact. He cried out, but the sound was lost in the cacophony of snapping twigs and rustling leaves. Finally, mercifully, his descent came to a jarring halt at the bottom of the ravine. Stan lay there, stunned and gasping for breath. Every inch of his body throbbed with pain, and he could taste blood in his mouth. "Help!" he croaked weakly, but his voice was barely more than a whisper. "Somebody, please!" The forest seemed to mock him with its silence, broken only by the distant calls of birds and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Stan squeezed his eyes shut, fighting back tears of pain and frustration. "Mommy, look, there's someone down there!" The high-pitched voice cut through Stan's haze of misery like a lifeline. He forced his eyes open, blinking against the sunlight filtering through the trees. "Oh my goodness, you're right, Tracy. Sir, are you all right?" A woman's voice, filled with concern, floated down from somewhere above him. Stan tried to respond, but all that came out was a pained groan. He heard the sound of scrambling, then footsteps approaching rapidly. "Be careful, sweetie. The ground's unstable." "I'm okay, Mom. I've got long legs, remember?" A moment later, a face swam into Stan's field of vision. It belonged to a young girl, no more than 12 or 13, with a mop of curly hair and wide, concerned eyes. What struck Stan most, even in his addled state, was how high up those eyes seemed to be. "Hi there," the girl said, crouching down beside him. "I'm Tracy. Don't worry, my mom's a nurse. She'll know what to do." Before Stan could process this, another figure appeared beside Tracy. This woman was tall and athletic-looking, with laugh lines around her eyes that deepened as she frowned in concentration. "Sir, can you hear me? I'm Carol. I'm going to check you for injuries, okay?" Stan managed a weak nod, wincing as Carol's gentle hands probed his limbs and torso. She worked quickly and efficiently, her touch professional but reassuring. "Well, the good news is nothing seems to be broken," Carol announced after a few minutes. "But you've got some nasty cuts and bruises, and I'm worried about a possible concussion. We need to get you somewhere I can treat you properly." "Our house isn't far," Tracy piped up. "We could take him there, right, Mom?" Carol nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. "That's probably our best option. Sir, do you think you can stand if we help you?" Stan tried to push himself up, but a wave of dizziness washed over him. I'm not sure," he admitted, his voice hoarse. It's okay, Carol soothed. Tracy, honey, can you support his other side? We'll do this together. With Carol on one side and Tracy on the other, they managed to get Stan to his feet. He swayed unsteadily, leaning heavily on his rescuers. Whoa, Tracy exclaimed, adjusting her grip. You're so light. It's like picking up a doll. Stan felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. Even in his battered state, the comment stung his pride. He'd always been self-conscious about his small stature, and being manhandled by a young girl wasn't helping matters. Tracy, Carol admonished gently. Remember what we talked about? It's not polite to comment on people's bodies. Sorry, Tracy mumbled, looking abashed. I didn't mean anything bad by it. They began the slow, painful journey back to Carol and Tracy's home. Stan tried to focus on putting one foot in front of the other, but his mind kept drifting. The forest seemed to spin around him, and he found himself relying more and more on the support of his rescuers. Almost there, Carol encouraged after what felt like hours. Just a little further. Finally, a small cabin came into view through the trees. It was a cozy-looking structure with a wide porch and flower boxes beneath the windows. Under different circumstances, Stan might have appreciated its rustic charm. As they approached the front door, Tracy bounded ahead to open it. I'll go get the first aid kit, she called over her shoulder as she disappeared inside. Carol guided Stan into the living room, easing him down onto a well-worn couch. Just relax, she said soothingly. I'm going to clean those cuts and check you over more thoroughly. Stan nodded weakly, sinking into the soft cushions. His entire body ached, and he could feel the sticky warmth of blood on his skin in several places. He closed his eyes, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion. Here's the kit, Mom! Tracy's voice jolted Stan back to awareness. He blinked, trying to focus on the girl as she handed a large white box to her mother. Thank you, sweetie, Carol said. Now, why don't you go find some clothes our guest can change into? His are all torn up. Tracy's eyes lit up. Ooh, can I pick out something fun? Carol chuckled. Just make sure it's comfortable and clean, okay? As Tracy bounded off again, Carol turned her attention back to Stan. She worked quickly and efficiently, cleaning his cuts and applying bandages where needed. Her touch was gentle but firm, and Stan found himself relaxing despite the sting of antiseptic. You're lucky, Carol commented as she worked. These cuts aren't too deep, and I don't think you have a concussion after all. But you're going to be sore for a while. Stan nodded, wincing as she dabbed at a particularly tender spot on his forehead. Thank you, he murmured. I don't know what I would have done if you and Tracy hadn't found me. Carol smiled warmly. We're happy to help. It's a good thing we decided to take that nature walk today. Before Stan could respond, Tracy burst back into the room, her arms full of colorful fabric. I found some clothes, she announced triumphantly. Stan's eyes widened as he took in the assortment of garments. There were frilly blouses, floral skirts, and what looked suspiciously like a pair of lacy panties. Tracy, Carol began, her tone a mixture of amusement and exasperation. I'm not sure those are appropriate for our guest. But Tracy was already holding up a pale pink dress with a pleated skirt. Look, Mom, this one will fit perfectly. It's from when I was younger, before I hit my growth spurt. Stan felt his face grow hot. I don't think, he stammered, but Tracy was already pressing the dress into his hands. Try it on, she urged. Your clothes are all muddy and torn anyway. This will be much more comfortable. Stan looked helplessly at Carol, who seemed torn between amusement and sympathy. It's up to you, she said gently. But Tracy's right about your clothes being a mess, and it would be easier for me to finish treating your injuries if you changed into something clean. Feeling dazed and more than a little overwhelmed, Stan found himself nodding. Okay, he heard himself say, as if from a great distance. I'll try it on. Tracy clapped her hands in delight. Yay! Here, let me help you to the bathroom. You can change in there. Before he knew it, Stan was being ushered into a small bathroom, the pile of feminine clothing thrust into his arms. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving him alone with his reflection in the mirror. He barely recognized the person staring back at him. His face was pale and scratched, his hair a tangled mess. His clothes were indeed torn and caked with mud. With a sigh of resignation, he began to peel off his ruined garments. As he slipped on the dress, Stan was surprised by how soft the fabric felt against his skin. It settled over his slight frame with unexpected ease, the skirt falling just above his knees. He smoothed his hands down the front, marveling at the delicate pattern of flowers embroidered along the hem. A knock at the door made him jump. "Are you okay in there?" Tracy's voice called out. "Do you need any help?" "No, I'm fine," Stan replied, his voice higher than usual. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I'll be out in a minute." Taking a deep breath, he turned back to the mirror. The person looking back at him now was different. Softer somehow, more vulnerable. With his delicate features and the feminine clothing, he could almost pass for a girl, he whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. But what shocked him most wasn't the transformation itself. It was the strange thrill that ran through him at the sight. For the first time in his life, Stan felt right. As if he'd been wearing an ill-fitting costume all this time and had finally found clothes that truly suited him. With trembling fingers, he smoothed down the skirt one last time. Then, taking a deep breath, he opened the bathroom door and stepped out into the hallway. Tracy was waiting just outside, practically bouncing with excitement. Her eyes lit up when she saw Stan. "Oh my gosh, you look so cute," she squealed. "Mom, come look." Carol appeared from the living room, her eyebrows rising in surprise. "Well," she said, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "That certainly is a transformation." Stan felt his face grow hot again, but this time it wasn't entirely from embarrassment. There was something else there, too, a warm glow of pleasure? Satisfaction? He wasn't sure, but it wasn't an unpleasant feeling. It fits well," he mumbled, smoothing his hands over the skirt again. "Thank you, Tracy." Tracy beamed. "You're welcome. Oh, we should do your hair too, and maybe some makeup? Mom, can we—" Carol laughed. "Slow down, honey. Let's make sure our guest is comfortable first." She turned to Stan, her expression softening. "How are you feeling? Any dizziness or nausea?" Stan shook his head, surprised to realize it was true. The pain from his fall had faded to a dull ache, and the world no longer seemed to be spinning around him. "I feel better, actually," he admitted. "Good," Carol nodded. "The rest and change of clothes probably helped, but I still want you to take it easy for a while. Why don't you come sit down and we can talk about what happened?" As they made their way back to the living room, Tracy skipped ahead, chattering excitedly. "We should give you a girl name while you're dressed up," she suggested. "Like Stella. That's pretty close to Stan, right?" Stan felt a jolt go through him at the name. Stella. It sounded right, somehow, like slipping on a comfortable pair of shoes he'd forgotten he owned. "Stella," he repeated softly, testing the name on his tongue. I like that." Tracy clapped her hands in delight. "Yay! Stella it is then. And we'll use she and her too, okay? It'll be like playing dress-up, but better." As they settled onto the couch, Stella now found herself sinking into the soft cushions with a sense of relief. The dress settled around her legs, the fabric cool and smooth against her skin. It was strange how quickly she was adapting to this new identity, even if it was just pretend. Carol sat across from them in an armchair, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "So, Stella," she said, emphasizing the new name slightly, "can you tell us what happened out there on the trail?" Stella took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. It felt odd to recount the story of her fall while sitting here in a dress, being referred to with feminine pronouns. But at the same time, there was something freeing about it, as if the distance between Stan and Stella allowed her to view the events with a new perspective. I was hiking, she began hesitantly. I wanted to challenge myself, to prove that I could handle a tougher trail. But I guess I bit off more than I could chew. The path was steeper than I expected, and I lost my footing. Tracy leaned in, her eyes wide. That must have been so scary. Were you afraid? Stella nodded, a lump forming in her throat as she remembered the terrifying moments of the fall. I was, she admitted. I thought I might die. Carol reached out, placing a comforting hand on Stella's knee. The touch sent a warm tingle through her body, a mixture of comfort and something else she couldn't quite name. You're safe now, Carol said softly. And you're stronger than you think. Many people wouldn't have been able to walk away from a fall like that. Stella felt a rush of gratitude towards this kind woman and her daughter. They had not only rescued her, but had accepted her, accepted Stella, without judgment or mockery. It was a novel experience, one that made her feel seen in a way she never had before. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Both of you. I don't know how to repay your kindness. Tracy giggled, bouncing slightly on the couch. You can repay us by letting me do your makeup, she declared. Please, Mom? Can I? Carol laughed, shaking her head fondly at her daughter's enthusiasm. If Stella's okay with it, I don't see why not. But remember, honey, subtle is better. We're not getting ready for the circus here. At the mention of the circus, a spark of curiosity ignited in Stella's mind. The circus? She repeated, looking at Carol with newfound interest. A wistful smile crossed Carol's face. Ah, yes, I used to be a circus performer back in the day. Trapeze artist, actually. That's where I met Tracy's father. Tracy nodded eagerly. Mom was amazing. She could fly through the air like a bird. And Dad was a strong man. That's why I'm so tall. I got his height genes. Stella listened in fascination as Carol and Tracy shared stories of life in the circus. The way Carol's eyes lit up as she described soaring through the air, the excitement in Tracy's voice as she recounted watching her parents perform. It painted a picture of a world so different from anything Stella had ever known. As they talked, Tracy began to fuss with Stella's hair, gently combing out the tangles and arranging it in a more feminine style. The sensation of fingers running through her hair was soothing, and Stella found herself relaxing even further. There, Tracy said at last, sitting back to admire her work. Now you really look like a Stella. Want to see? She held up a small hand mirror, and Stella gasped softly at her reflection. Her hair had been smoothed and styled, framing her face in a way that softened her features. Combined with the dress and her delicate build, the effect was striking. She looked pretty. Wow, Stella breathed, unable to take her eyes off the mirror. Is that really me? Carol smiled warmly at Stella's reaction. It's amazing what a little styling can do, isn't it? You look lovely, dear. Stella felt a blush creep up her cheeks at the compliment. It was strange how much those simple words affected her. She'd never been called lovely before, and the feeling it evoked was both thrilling and confusing. Can I do your makeup now? Tracy asked eagerly, already reaching for a small cosmetics bag. Just a little bit, I promise. Stella hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Okay, she said softly. Just not too much, all right? As Tracy set to work, applying a light dusting of powder and a hint of blush to Stella's cheeks, Carol continued their earlier conversation. So, Stella, she said, her tone gentle but curious, what brought you out to these woods in the first place? It's quite a ways from the nearest town. Stella's eyes fluttered closed as Tracy carefully applied a pale eyeshadow. The soft brush tickled her eyelids, and she found herself relaxing into the unfamiliar sensation. I needed to get away, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. From everything, really. My job, my family, my life. She felt a lump form in her throat as the words spilled out. It was the first time she'd said it aloud, and the truth of it hit her hard. "Oh, honey." Carol's voice was filled with sympathy. "What happened?" Stella opened her eyes, blinking back tears that threatened to fall. Tracy paused in her makeup application, looking concerned. "It's just everything," Stella said, struggling to find the right words. "I've always felt out of place, I guess. Like I didn't fit in anywhere. At work, I'm the guy who can't keep up with the others. With my family, I'm the disappointment who can't seem to do anything right. And with friends, well, I don't really have many of those." Carol leaned forward, her expression empathetic. "That sounds incredibly lonely," she said softly. Stella nodded, a single tear escaping despite her best efforts. "It is," she whispered. I thought if I could prove to myself that I could handle this hike, maybe I'd finally feel like I belonged somewhere, like I was worth something." Tracy, who had been listening intently, suddenly threw her arms around Stella in a tight hug. "You are worth something," she declared fiercely. "You're worth a lot, and you do belong. You belong right here with us." Stella stiffened for a moment, surprised by the sudden embrace, but then melted into it. The warmth and acceptance in Tracy's words and actions broke something loose inside her, and before she knew it, she was sobbing. Carol moved to sit on Stella's other side, wrapping an arm around both her and Tracy. "Let it out, sweetheart," she murmured. "Sometimes a good cry is exactly what we need." For several minutes, Stella wept, releasing years of pent-up frustration, loneliness, and confusion. Tracy and Carol held her through it all, offering silent support and comfort. Finally, as her sobs subsided into hiccups, Stella pulled back slightly. "I'm sorry," she sniffled, wiping at her eyes. "I've ruined your makeup job, Tracy." Tracy giggled, handing Stella a tissue. "That's okay. We can always start over. Mom says makeup is meant to be played with anyway." Carol nodded, giving Stella's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "That's right. And you know what? I think this calls for some comfort food. How about I whip up some hot chocolate and cookies while you girls finish up here?" "Oh, yes, please," Tracy exclaimed. "Can we have the special circus cookies?" Carol laughed, rising from the couch. "I suppose we can. It's a special occasion, after all." As Carol headed to the kitchen, Tracy turned back to Stella with a determined expression. "Okay, let's fix your makeup, and this time we're going all out. You need some serious cheering up, and nothing does that better than a full makeover." Despite her lingering emotional turmoil, Stella found herself smiling at Tracy's enthusiasm. "All right," she agreed. "Do your worst, or best, I suppose." Tracy grinned, reaching for her makeup bag with renewed vigor. "You're going to look amazing, I promise." As Tracy worked, carefully applying foundation, blush, eyeshadow, and mascara, Stella found herself relaxing into the experience. There was something soothing about being pampered like this, about letting someone else take control for a while. "So," Tracy said as she carefully lined Stella's eyes, "tell me more about your job. What do you do?" Stella sighed. "I work in an office. Data entry, mostly. It's not very exciting." Tracy wrinkled her nose. "That does sound boring. But hey, at least you get to sit down all day, right? When Mom and Dad were in the circus, they were always on their feet." The mention of the circus sparked Stella's curiosity again. "What was it like growing up in the circus?" she asked. Tracy's face lit up. "Oh, it was amazing. We were always traveling to new places, meeting new people, and everyone in the circus was like one big family. We all looked out for each other." As Tracy chattered on about life in the circus, Stella found herself drawn into the colorful world she described. It sounded so different from her own dull, lonely existence, a life full of excitement, adventure, and most importantly, connection. "What happened?" Stella asked softly when Tracy paused for breath. "Why did your family leave the circus?" Tracy's smile faltered slightly. "Dad got hurt," she said, her voice quieter now. "He fell during a performance. It wasn't too bad, but it scared Mom. She decided it was time for us to settle down somewhere safer. Stella felt a pang of sympathy. That must have been hard for all of you. Tracy nodded, her usual exuberance dimmed. It was, at first. But Mom says sometimes life takes us in unexpected directions, and we just have to learn to adapt. Like you today. You didn't expect to end up here all dressed up, did you? Stella chuckled softly. No, I certainly didn't. But look how well it turned out, Tracy exclaimed, her enthusiasm returning. You look beautiful, and you've made new friends. Sometimes the unexpected can be pretty great. Before Stella could respond, Carol's voice called from the kitchen. Girls, the hot chocolate and cookies are ready. Tracy clapped her hands excitedly. Perfect timing! I just finished your makeup. Want to see? She held up the mirror again, and Stella gasped at her reflection. The face looking back at her was transformed. Her eyes seemed larger, framed by long, dark lashes. Her cheekbones were accentuated with a soft blush, and her lips shimmered with a pale pink gloss. Is that really me? Stella whispered, unable to tear her eyes away from the mirror. Tracy nodded proudly. Yep, told you you'd look amazing. Come on, let's go show Mom. As they made their way to the kitchen, Stella felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her felt ridiculous, a grown man playing dress-up like a little girl. But another part, a part that was growing stronger by the minute, felt right, as if she was finally seeing her true self for the first time. The kitchen was warm and inviting, filled with the rich aroma of chocolate and freshly baked cookies. Carol turned as they entered, her eyes widening as she took in Stella's appearance. Oh my, she breathed. Tracy, you've outdone yourself. Stella, you look absolutely beautiful. Stella felt her face grow hot at the compliment, but she couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. Thank you, she murmured. It's different, but nice. Carol gestured to the table where 3 steaming mugs of hot chocolate waited alongside a plate piled high with cookies. Sit, sit. The Circus cookies are best when they're still warm. As they settled around the table, Stella couldn't help but notice how normal it felt. Here she was, dressed as a woman, wearing makeup, about to enjoy hot chocolate and cookies with 2 people she'd only met hours ago. And yet it felt more right, more comfortable than any family dinner she'd ever had. So, Carol said as she passed the cookie plate, these aren't just any cookies. These are special Circus cookies. Tracy, why don't you explain the tradition to Stella? Tracy nodded eagerly, her mouth already full of cookie. She swallowed quickly and began. In the circus, we had this tradition. Before every show, we'd all get together and have these cookies. They're supposed to bring good luck and help us face our fears. She picked up another cookie, holding it out to Stella. See the shape? It's a little circus tent. And inside each one is a different filling. You never know what you're going to get until you bite into it. Stella took the offered cookie, examining it closely. The dough was indeed shaped like a miniature circus tent, complete with tiny flags on top. Go on, Carol encouraged. Take a bite. Let's see what the circus fates have in store for you today. With a mix of curiosity and trepidation, Stella bit into the cookie. Immediately, a burst of sweet, tangy flavor filled her mouth. She mumbled, her eyes widening in surprise. It's lemon? Tracy clapped her hands. Ooh, lemon. That's a good one. In circus lore, lemon means new beginnings and fresh starts. Carol nodded, her eyes twinkling. Quite appropriate, I'd say. After all, today marks the beginning of something new for you, doesn't it, Stella? Stella swallowed the last of the cookie, pondering Carol's words. It was true. Today had certainly been unlike any other day in her life. But was it really the beginning of something? Or just a strange interlude before she had to return to her normal, dreary existence? As if reading her thoughts, Carol reached out and patted Stella's hand. You know, she said gently, sometimes life gives us unexpected opportunities. The trick is recognizing them and having the courage to embrace them. Tracy nodded enthusiastically. Like when the clowns would improvise during a show. Mom always said those unplanned moments were when the real magic happened. Stella took a sip of her hot chocolate, savoring the rich, creamy taste. I'm not sure I know how to embrace this, she admitted, gesturing vaguely at herself. It's all so new and confusing. Carol's smile was warm and understanding. That's okay, honey. New things often are confusing at first. But tell me, how do you feel right now? Not what you think you should feel, but what you actually feel in your heart. Stella closed her eyes, taking a deep breath as she tried to sort through the tangle of emotions inside her. I feel scared, she said softly, but also excited and right somehow. Like I'm finally being honest with myself, even if I don't fully understand what that means yet. When she opened her eyes, she found both Carol and Tracy beaming at her. That sounds like a pretty good start to me, Carol said. Honesty with oneself is the foundation of all personal growth. Tracy reached out and squeezed Stella's hand. And you don't have to figure it all out at once. That's what friends are for, to help you along the way. Friends. The word sent a warm glow through Stella's chest. She couldn't remember the last time someone had called her a friend and meant it. Thank you, she whispered, blinking back tears for what felt like the 100th time that day. Both of you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me in the woods. Carol's expression turned thoughtful. You know, she said slowly, I don't think it was just chance that brought us together today. In the circus, we always used to say that there's no such thing as coincidence, only fate disguised as accident. Tracy nodded eagerly. Yeah, like how Mom and Dad met when Dad accidentally knocked over Mom's trapeze rigging. If that hadn't happened, they never would have talked, and I wouldn't exist. Stella couldn't help but laugh at Tracy's enthusiastic explanation. So, you think fate brought me here? To discover this about myself? Carol shrugged, a mysterious smile playing on her lips. Who knows? But I do think you were meant to be here today, Stella. And I think you have an opportunity now, a chance to explore this side of yourself in a safe, accepting environment. Tracy bounced in her seat, nearly spilling her hot chocolate in her excitement. Oh, yes! You should stay with us for a while, Stella. We have a spare room, and it would be like having a big sister. Stella's eyes widened in surprise. Stay? But I couldn't impose like that. And my job... Carol waved away her protests. Nonsense. You're not imposing at all. We'd be delighted to have you. As for your job, well, didn't you say you were trying to get away from all that? Maybe this is your chance for a real fresh start. Stella's mind whirled with the possibilities. Stay here? In this warm, accepting house with these kind people who seemed to understand her better after a few hours than anyone else had in her entire life? It was tempting, so tempting. But could she really do it? Could she leave behind everything she knew, even if what she knew made her miserable for this unknown future? As if sensing her internal struggle, Carol reached out and took Stella's hand. You don't have to decide right now, she said gently. Why don't you stay for a few days, at least until you've recovered from your fall? Give yourself some time to think things over without the pressure of your old life weighing on you. Tracy nodded eagerly. Yeah. And I can show you all my favorite spots in the woods. The safe ones, I mean. And we can have makeover sessions every day. Despite her uncertainty, Stella found herself smiling at Tracy's enthusiasm. I suppose a few days couldn't hurt, she said hesitantly. If you're sure I won't be in the way. Not at all, Carol assured her. In fact, I insist. It's settled then. You'll stay with us for a bit, and we'll help you figure things out. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.